Good morning and welcome to Sunday. I am so glad to be here and I'm so glad that you are too. So I'm actually coming to you live today. I'm just going to adjust my camera slightly. Coming to you live today from our tiny house, which you can see a little bit of here, our tiny kitchen, our tiny fridge. We're actually at the Peppers Creek showing it today, so I get to be here and speak with you from the tiny house. I'm super excited. Okay, so I am transitioning, I guess in a lot of ways in life right now, but the one here is that I'm going to be speaking regularly for now on Sunday mornings, doing more of a message, a 30-minute-ish message on how to live a rich life. In all of my conversations with people, I have noticed some themes, right? And one of the themes is, oh, I've got a ladybug joining us here. I'm gonna just move her. We've got ladybugs and stink bugs in the tiny house sometimes, especially when it's warm in here and freezing out there. So you bear with me as they might, be attracted to the camera. So in all of my conversations with people, over the 25 years that I have been doing this type of work, helping people, there's constant themes. There's very similar themes, and one of them is I want to live a really good life, right? Now, people don't necessarily always phrase it like that, but the essence is I want to live a good life. I want life to be fun. I want life to be enjoyable. I want to feel good. And I want there to be a purpose for why I'm living. And then also, of course, I want enough money to actually enjoy life, to be able to do the things I want to do and not feel worried, right? And so as in my own process and my own transformation and just my own meditation and thinking, I was like, what is it that I'm really communicating to people at the heart of it, right? And I've come up with all different words to refer to it. My favorite really is liberated, badass, and also just liberated living, because that essentially is what I've been able to create for myself and what I help clients create. So it really is this ability and decision to live a liberated life, to live life on your own terms, to be able to live from a posture, from a position of life is good and so am I, right? And being able to really embrace life rather than fear life. So I've come up with this phrase, how to live a rich life, right? And that's really what I'll be speaking to you about, preaching to you about, sharing my message over the weeks ahead for as long as I feel called to do it on Sunday mornings at around this time. So my drive for why to live a rich life, just to share with you a little bit for the context, and then we'll dig deeper into one specific principle of how to do this, how to live a rich life, one specific principle that I want to share with you this morning. So we are born with a very specific purpose, right? And sometimes in the craziness of life, we get distracted by the notion that we're actually here, or from the notion that we're here with great purpose. Not just like small purpose, and not just like a passing by passive kind of purpose, but with a really great, specific, intentional purpose. Both in the sense of humankind has a purpose, and you specifically have purpose. Now, purpose may be one of those words for you that's like so overdone, and I get it. I totally get it. And as much work and thought as I put into my work and my own personal development, as well as personal development as the thing that I do for a living and the thing that I help people with, Sorry, I've gotten totally distracted. I have my camera set up with this beautiful window and I'm watching just some of what's going on here, this wording. So I just got a little distracted, sorry. So your purpose, right? It can feel like an overused word. And when I come back to all of the ways that I describe things, it does come back to purpose, right? Why are we here on the planet, right? As a human kind, as a race, and also why am I specifically here? Everything, every path that I have journeyed down to consider this and contemplate this as I do, it comes back to purpose, right? We want this, we're innately designed to have a drive for purpose, for meaning. I exist for a reason. Because when I'm not attached to I exist for a reason, I go floundering. I get veered off course much easier. And in general, I flounder. Okay? And when I say I'm speaking more as the general you. When you are disconnected from your purpose, when you're disconnected from meaning, you flounder. So if you feel like you're floundering this morning, that's probably part of why you're floundering, is because you're not actually as rooted in purpose and in your purpose as you need to be motivated and focused for life. And that's part of what we're going to talk about this morning, is your focus. So I want you to be reminded this morning, you are created for great purpose. Don't underestimate it. And those desires on your heart, those pulls, those cravings, those desires, those things that you're like, oh, I really wish I had more time to do X, Y, and Z, that is part of your purpose. It's literally part of why you are here on the planet. You're also here to live powerful, big lives. So whatever it is for you that you hear into that when I say powerful, big lives, you get to decide, right? That isn't like a pre-cut notion of what that should look like for you specifically. You get to decide what that means for you, because it's really about what's placed specifically on your unique heart. What it is that you're meant to do in your big, powerful life. Ultimately, to promote the goodness of living, right? To promote more life. So when you think about why are we all here, right? Like, what are we doing here on the planet? What was the intention? What was the design for why we're here? And it really comes back to the purpose is to create and to promote more life, to cultivate more living, more excitement around living, more desire for life, more abundance in living. So that covers both the big picture purpose of why we're here and also the small purpose, right? And I say it just sort of in the grand scheme of the entirety of why we're here, but then also why you specifically are here. Okay, so I just want to add to this. If you grew up with a foundation, specifically if you were taught like something different than you have great purpose here in this lifetime, right? So certainly, and we'll say sort of this mainline traditional church denomination religion, a lot of people are taught that the good life is after we die, okay? And I myself believe this for many, many years. And it never made sense to me. Like, if the good life is after we die, then why are we here? And so part of my personal transformation and my new excitement for living And my new motivation every morning for getting up out of bed is because I no longer believe that. I now believe that we are intended to live a really rich life here in this lifetime. Okay? And I'm going to talk more about that as we go through this morning's message. But I just want to introduce that to you because here's the thing. If you've been taught that the good life is in like a long time from now, and or if you've been taught that this existence, this world, this place that we're living in right now is sought for destruction of some kind or another, right? I know I used to say like some semblance of the world is going to hell, right? And so if you have something similar to that or in any vein similar to that, then your motivation for living will be hindered. That's just a fact. In my mind, it's a fact. If you think the good life is like in many, many, many years from now after you die, and or you think we're going to cease to exist here, or life is designed to get really, really bad here, your outlook on life is just not going to be as rich already. Like right from the get-go, you're already going to be brought down a notch, and your mind isn't going to be oriented to how do I live a rich life? You're already thinking more, how do I live a rich life? It's gonna enter into this zone, this human zone of thinking, how do I survive, right? How do I get through this lifetime? So I am going to do a whole message just on this one topic. So I'm going to keep going to really get to the main thing I wanted to share with you this morning. But I wanted to throw that in there. And the other thing that I think really hinders people from orienting around how do I get to live a rich life is if you watch the nightly news or the morning news, if you watch the news daily, your mind will become convinced that you are not meant to live a rich and meaningful life. Your mind will eventually start thinking, what is the point? There is so many things like wrong with the world. What is the point? And again, you're going to be brought down, not on purpose, not intentionally. You're not just in your mind going to say like, oh, I'm going to live a lesser life. No, but that is the way your mind works. And so without you knowing it, right, without you being conscious of it, you will automatically live a smaller version of life because you're not having the full rich picture. Your picture is getting hampered. It's being hindered right from the get-go. Okay, so that being the premise of what I'm going to be sharing with you in the coming weeks ahead. And like I said, as long as I feel called to share on this topic and these messages on Sunday morning. So what I want to zone in on for the next 15 minutes or so is where your attention goes, your life goes, or your life flows. Now, the original phrase will say, I think goes something more like where your attention goes, your energy flows. But I like this other way of saying it because it gives it a little bit more context. It feels a little bit more tangible. I know for me, up until a few years ago, this term energy felt a little bit hard for me to really understand. So I want to speak to you where I think a lot of you probably are. And also I just wanted to feel more grounded because why not? So where your attention goes, your life flows. Your life goes. The places in which you focus, the places upon which you give your attention is where your life will go. Okay? This notion, this principle, as I'm referring to it, can be easily dismissed, right? You could hear that this morning and be like, oh yeah, I know that, right? Or you could be like, oh yeah, of course, like that seems obvious. But this is what I want to offer to you. Everything that I offer to you, I'm offering it with great intention and lots of thought and consideration. This is my life's work, right? This is what I do with people. It is where I spend the majority of my time, both for myself personally and for my business, in really understanding these concepts with greater and greater awareness every day. And so while I'm breaking it down into its simplest form, I want you to know each of these principles is actually very complex and has like an infinite amount of wisdom for you to glean from, an infinite amount of understanding that you can gather in order to live a more rich life. So where you focus, where you put your attention is where your life goes. Okay, so in its simplest way, right, you can be like, oh yeah, of course, that makes sense. Like, if I focus on this, then my life tends to go in that direction. Or if I focus on, this morning, one of the things I was focused on is making sure I had great internet and a quiet place where I would be able to easily hop on and share my message with you. And so I spent time last night preparing for it. I spent time talking to Troy. We had a showing this morning. And so we were going to have people here and the dogs were going to be here. And so my attention in the last 24 hours has been on, I want to make sure that I'm able to deliver my message this morning with ease. And so here I am delivering my message with ease. Okay? So it's that simple. In the practical steps of it, it's that simple. But I want to dig a little deeper because I know you know how to be focused, right? Although I have to say, I think some people, you can become convinced that you can't focus, right? There are definitely people out there, and even myself sometimes, but I've talked to a bunch of people in recent 3 months who are adults who've recently been diagnosed with ADHD. And I'm not going to get sidetracked into that conversation, although I think it's relevant, right? We can actually be challenged in our day-to-day thinking of who we are as a human, that I am a person. You could become convinced that I am a person, or that you are a person that has a hard time focusing. So what I want to offer to you, if you are a person who has a hard time focusing, whether you have an actual diagnosis or not, it doesn't matter. I myself have thought over the years, I really have a hard time staying focused. Now, for some of you that know me personally, you may be surprised by that. For others of you, you'd be like, oh yeah, I totally understand how you could see that, because I will have like 100 new ideas every day. And I could get lost in my ideas. And that used to happen to me, where I would get lost in my ideas. But part of this principle can really help you to, again, stay better focused. Because the place where you put your attention is important. It means something, right? And if you don't have a bigger framework for how you're living, how you're choosing to live, you will get lost. Your attention and your focus can feel very scattered when you're not deeply grounded in your specific purpose or in the bigger purpose of why we're here. So, as humans, we operate on patterns, we operate on themes, habits, routines. Whether you're a person that says I'm a routine person, or you're a person that says I'm not a routine person, you still operate based on patterns and themes. And when I say that, it's really just a fact for me. We operate based on patterns. As humans, in our core human nature, we look for things to be the same. We look for those routines. We look for those places that are familiar. And we also, just our operating system, right? The brain of our operating system, it functions based on what's familiar. It functions inside of patterns. I'm going to leave it at that for now this morning, because again, I'm going to talk separately on that as just a separate teaching. So as you begin to understand how you operate based on patterns and themes, you really go even deeper into, oh wow, if I operate based on patterns, then it's actually really incredibly important to know what I'm focusing on. Because if I'm not focused and I'm not intentional in where I put my attention, well then my patterning, right, the way my brain operates is naturally going to get focused in areas that I don't actually want to be focused on. So when your attention is focused and you're when you're aware that your attention is focused, you become aware, and you learn this principle, is that what you put your focus on, you recreate, in essence, you're recreating in your life. So I want to break down a little bit of what that actually looks like for you this morning. If you're focused, well, let me just also start off by saying that as humans, our nature is to focus on preventing pain, preventing hardship, preventing feeling discomfort, but essentially at the heart of it is to prevent pain, right? And that is our human nature, and we need it, right? It helps to keep us safe. It helps to keep us alive, literally. It helps us to make decisions in the favor of life for ourselves. And so it can be very natural to focus in areas of concern. Focus on things where you would just sort of naturally have worry or anxiety pop up. But some of the ones that I wrote down this morning are our focus on what we have lost, right? Whether this is extreme version of what we've lost, in other words, significant losses like life, people in our lives that are super important to us who have died for one reason or another. Could be major loss like, natural disaster type level losses. Could be just the loss of a relationship, right? There are all kinds of losses that people deal with. And things that we lose that we don't necessarily maybe categorize as losses, but when we feel like we had them and then we no longer have them, essentially it's considered a loss. It feels like you've lost something, okay? And so that's one of the big ones. The other one I wrote down is sickness, right? Our health. And we primarily focus on things that are not working well in the body. So whether you officially have an illness, a disease, a sickness of some kind, or you just wake up one morning and you don't feel good. It is natural for our attention to go to those areas, to go to loss, to go to sickness. The other two I wrote down were money, right? It's very natural to worry and have anxiety about, do I have enough money? How do I get more money? And if something bad happens, will I be able to afford it? Will I be able to take care of myself, right? So that's like the third one I wrote down is the worry around money. And then the fourth one I wrote down that I feel most people focus on very naturally is relationships. How relationships are going, how we feel about relationships, and ultimately we want to know, and we spend time worrying about, are people going to be there for us, right? We want to know for sure that we're not alone. And so we spend time naturally in our humanness wondering about, are people there for me? So those are the big areas that I think naturally people spend a lot of time worried about or anxious about. So inside of that, right, when you're focused and or your attention is largely going towards any one of those things, right, it's all about preventing pain. We're trying to prevent ourselves from hurting more. And as you grow from child through adulthood, you experience a lot of these things. A lot of these losses, you experience sickness, you experience worries about money, and you experience your feelings and your people not being there for you. And so inside of that, right, we think about what you ultimately spend a lot of time thinking about. And so ultimately, when you think about your attention, it really is what you spend your energy on, right? And another way that you could break that down more concretely is the things you spend time thinking about and the things you spend your emotions on, right? The things you have feelings towards. And we spend a lot of time thinking about our feelings and experiencing our feelings. And then we spend a lot of time thinking. That really is who we are, right? At the core, we're thinking beings and we're feeling beings. So when we're talking about your attention, it's really what do you spend your time thinking about and what do you spend your feeling about? Okay? So inside of that concept, right, the things in which you put your attention on are the things that you spend your time thinking about and the things you spend time feeling about, having emotion about. And so for most of us, when we're oriented in our humanness, to be thinking about, to be worrying about, to be orientated towards not experiencing pain, we end up spending a lot of time and energy, a lot of our emotions go towards what we actually don't want, right? We don't actually want more loss. We don't want sickness. We don't want not to have enough money, and we don't want to think that people aren't going to be there for us. But in our human nature, we spend the time worried about those things not happening. So another way to think about that is you spend a lot of time thinking about and feeling about how you don't want to repeat those things that have happened in the past. Okay? And so another way to think about it is you actually don't spend a lot of time thinking about or feeling about the things you do want in your life. Okay? And so all of this is important to understand because ultimately, where you put your attention, your life flows from there, right? Where you put your focus, the things upon which you focus on, the things that you think about is what creates your future. So I'm going to talk even more about this particular topic, about how our thoughts create our life. And if you don't know about that, I certainly invite you to think more on it and to look more into it. And of course, reach out to me. This is the heart of what I teach my clients and what I teach people in how to live a liberated life. How to live life on your own terms is to orient your thoughts and your feelings towards that which you do want. Because again, the places that you spend your time thinking, right? And another way to think about it is like if you spend 80% of your time thinking about and feeling about what you don't want, you naturally are going to create a lot more circumstances that have anxiety and worry filled in them. Okay, so, you think about that person in your life, because it's easier to think about other people than it is about ourselves in this terms, who's always worried about something, right? Who's always anxious about something. Now, you may not feel like you're a person who's always anxious and worried about something, but here's the thing. Until you really learn how to put your attention on what you do desire in your life, you naturally operate from a human place on focusing on those things that you don't want to have happen. The things that you're like really intentionally working to make sure don't happen in your life. Okay? And it's not a bad thing in the sense that like you haven't done anything wrong, right? And you're not a bad person for working on that, right? No, it's just not as useful for you. Because it actually creates more anxiety and more worry. So for just an example, right? If you're worried about money and you're constantly thinking about, I hope I have enough money. I want to make sure I'm making enough money. Well, you're constantly focusing on, at the root, you're constantly focusing on how you don't have enough money. Okay, and if you say things like, oh, I can't afford that yet, or oh, I can have that in the future, or oh, I'll be able to enjoy that in the future, then you're actually focusing still on what you don't have right now. And ultimately how you don't have enough right now, and therefore you can't enjoy as much right now. Does that make sense? So again, these are really big concepts. So just allow them to come into your mind and allow yourself to meditate on them this week. This is what I do with folks for 6 months at a time, really teaching these concepts and then helping people see where their mind falls back into that old thinking so that they can come back over here into the new way of thinking about what they want so they can actually create what they want in their life. So let me just give another example, right? If you're constantly worried about your weight, this one just came to me, so I feel divine to, inspired to share it. If you're constantly thinking about how much you weigh, right? And you're constantly thinking about, I have to eat the right foods and I have to exercise and I need to be a different weight. All of your attention is going on how you're not at the right weight right now. Okay, and so the core of that is you are not as you should be. That's the core. If you're constantly focused on how you're not the right weight, then you're actually ultimately focused on the shame of how you are not as you should be. Okay? So this is super important because as humans, our natural tendency is to focus at the root of all of those issues, right? Of all those places that humans naturally focus on. It's on fear. Right? It's on fear and it's on shame. I don't have enough. I'm not as I should be. And fear around all of those things. That's the core. That's the root, right? And so I'm always looking for the root of things because when I can go in with a client and I can help you go to the root of why your life looks like this, right? On why you don't have exactly what you want in your life right now. And I can help you go right to the root of why your thoughts and your feelings, your attention is going to this root related to fear, related to shame, and we attend to that root, then you can go boom, right over to here where you want to be. Okay, so we do that again because of our human nature. Our parents did it. Their parents did it. It's a generational passing down, right, of that focus being on our human nature. And ultimately, it has been there for the generations to help us survive as a human race, naturally. The part that's been really under-talked about, under-taught, under-communicated is that you're not only human, you are also divine. Okay? And because you are also divine, you have a divine nature. You have a beautiful, spiritual, God-given, divine nature. Okay? And what you're missing in your life right now is being deeply rooted in your spiritual, divine nature. Because that is where infinite possibilities comes from. The same as we think about related to God, right? He's infinite in nature, and there are infinite possibilities when we think about God, right? Or perhaps for you, it's the universe, right? The creative intelligence that created all of this. When we think about that nature, it is infinite, and it's easy to think it's infinite in our minds. But we don't actually focus on how we are of the same nature. And therefore, we have infinite possibilities rooted in us. both as a human race and you as an individual have infinite possibilities, infinite power, infinite capability inside of you. Okay? And when I used to call my business Liberated Badass, this is where that came from. Because it was like this eye-opening revelation to really understand so many of the things that I had learned growing up in church, right? The scripture that comes to mind is this: you have the power to move the mountains when you are rooted in your divine nature. That used to like completely confound me, right? Like, I can't move a mountain. What does that even mean? But when I got deeper levels of understanding about who I am as a human, I came to understand, oh, that's because I have the same nature of God inside of me. It makes me also divine, with infinite possibilities and infinite capabilities. And then it makes sense to me how I could move a mountain. Let that land, let that percolate, let that resonate, and let it set you on fire, honestly. That really is. I don't know if you've noticed, I've started using the little fire emoji on like everything, because it is that exciting for me to discover this level of awareness that is within me and is in you. Okay, so the two things I'll leave with you this morning related to your divine nature. It is the thing that you need to tap into the most to create the life that you desire. So you've got all these struggles, you've got all these hardships, you've got all this programming and conditioning that says life is so hard. And so you go through life with that mentality, with that experience of life is so hard, okay? And whatever version of that fits for you. But when you go through life with your fullness tapped into the divine nature that is inside of you, and you're not just thinking, if you grew up in the church, you're not just thinking that Jesus is divine, right? Or that Jesus was the human that held the power of God. But you're now able to reconcile, I too hold that same power. Everything changes. Again, whether you believe in Jesus, whether you believe, wherever you grew up from, the importance here is that there is a divine nature inside of you that allows you to access life and experience life in a fundamentally, radically different way than when you're caught up in how life is so hard, which is our human nature. Okay, so put your attention on the life you want, right? The flow that you desire, that is where you need to put your attention. When you desire, as we all do, I believe we all want the most amazing life. That's just like the fundamentals of being a human, because we're fundamentally also divine. We all want an amazing life. We all want to feel purpose. We all want to feel fulfilled. We all want to enjoy. Even when really bad things happen, there's this desire in us to get back to a feeling of life is good. Life is here for me, right? When you think about God, you think God must have amazing plans, that he created all of this and he created me. But then life happens and we get sucked back in over here into the hardship and the suffering. And again, in my opinion, there just hasn't been, in my personal experience and in all of the hundreds of people I've worked with in the last 25 years of my work, there just hasn't been the focus on how you're divine and how you're powerful. And so naturally life is hard. When you don't believe you're powerful, when you don't believe you have a voice in life, a voice in how life plays out, a say, that you don't feel like you have some level of control, which is what most of us get taught, is that we don't have control, well, then of course, life goes, blah. Do you like that? But when you believe and you know and you're rooted in, I have a voice and I am powerful, and life was designed for me, right? As I learned as a child, when you were a child, you knew life was designed for you. You were excited and you were adventurous, and life was for you. So life is in favor of more life. Wherever you're at in your life right now, in your experience of life right now, I want you to know life is for more life. And that is inside of you, this desire for more life. So even those of you who are in the midst of serious hardship right now, the reason you have that spark, you want more life, whatever that looks like, you want to still be cultivating relationships, or you want your business to do well, or you're wanting to start a family, like all of those things, or you want great health, even in the midst of hardship, the reason you have that is because life's purpose is to cultivate more of life. And so naturally you are in a hardship, but your spring of life is still within you. Woo! Love this stuff. It's so good. So you have to actually go into the depths of your foundation and do an overhaul to actually create a foundation of life is for more life. You can't just think about that. You actually have to go in and cultivate, till the soil of your life, the foundation that you have had for the last many, many, many years, and you have to till it until every area, every arena in your life is in alignment with life is for more life. And then number 2 is to live in your desires. Most of us have these desires, this spring of life that's coming up in us, and we go, psh, and we say, oh, I can't worry about that right now, or oh, I can't focus on that right now because I have to do the things, right? I have to really make sure I'm taking care of business the right way, which is just our human nature coming in, our fearful side to say, like, you have to make enough money right now. You have to stockpile the money to make sure you have enough for later, right? You have to stockpile the food, the material possessions right now to make sure you have enough for later, right? You never know what might happen. It's all fear. And I'm not saying not to, like, save money. Don't get me wrong, right? I'm all about the financial planning and the financial awareness and intention and all of that. But when the focus is on, I have to work really hard to make sure I have enough money, we're not focused on how we will and already do have enough money. And so when you're super focused on not having enough and being sure you have enough, then ultimately you're not focused on creating more abundance for yourself because you're focused on lack. You're focused on the scarcity. You're focused on not enough versus being super focused on how you have enough and how you could create more with ease. So living in your desires, okay? Now, living in the desires, that spring of life that is within you, those are the things you are truly meant to focus on, okay? We want to say that we're focusing on the important things, like your family and the providing for your family. That's, I feel like over the 25 years of working with people, it's the thing I hear the most, right? In their suffering, I would say, well, why are you doing that? And they would say, because I have to provide for my family. And I'm like, but if you're your most unhappy, which leads to you eventually getting sick because stress just literally does create sickness, and you are really not a happy person when you're around your family, then really you're not giving your family the best of you. So while you may think you're doing the right things, chances are, unless you are intentionally planning for the desires of your heart, for the things that bring you true joy, for the things that bring you true more life, then you're not actually doing what's best for your family, or more importantly for you, and more importantly for the advancement of life, the advancement of the creation. Okay, so focusing your attention on that which you desire to have more of, to create more of. Focusing on those places, those spaces of trust, of faith, of believing, of having faith that life is in your favor, that God wants more good things for you. It requires you to let go of the past. It requires you to let go of your losses. It requires you to let go of the focus being on prevention of pain, and instead it goes to being proactive on creating more goodness in your life. All right, you guys, as always, I'm so grateful for your time to spend together this morning, creating a rich life. It is the fundamental, it is the foundation of living a good life, of living a liberated life, of living life on your own terms. And this principle this morning of where your attention goes, your life flows, I trust will help you in your own liberation journey. For those of you that are ready to do that deeper dive work, I teach all of these things in a one-on-one setting where just you and I work together. Week to week, we hop on here digitally so I can work with anybody anywhere in the world. And I teach you these concepts and I help you apply these concepts in a real and tangible way, while also removing those concepts that are there infiltrating your brain, rooting you in the fears and the shames of life. So if you're interested in that, I'll drop the link in here later on today to be able to book a call, sign up for a time, reach out to me. I love talking to people. For whatever reasons you might have that you have not signed up, you have not reached out to me, let me know what those are as well. Because again, I know what it is to be so rooted in fear. It keeps you from literally just reaching out to me. It keeps you from dropping comments here. It keeps you from ultimately your best life. It keeps you from being in your liberated life. Okay, so let me know what those reasons are that you've not taken that next step. And I will literally coach you from here to be able to take those next steps. That's literally why I'm here. I'm all about the advancement of life. It is my mission and my journey to help people in the advancement of their own unique lives, because I know that the more of us that get liberated and free, we get to enjoy life that much more. All right, you guys, as always, thanks for spending time with me. And between now and when I see you next, go do that thing you most want to be doing, and I will talk to you soon.